Welcome back to the Weekend Show. Today on the Lifestyle segment, we'll be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on logistics and delivery companies in Nigeria. Joining me now is the CEO of TOWNBOY Limited, GERRY EAMON. Thank you so much for joining me on today's program.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
You're welcome, GERRY. It's a pleasure having you on the program. The Chinese President Xi Jinping famously said that delivery companies like yours, logistic companies like yours, have become the new Silk Road for healthcare and essential materials during this COVID-19 pandemic. Can you talk to me more about the challenges that you have faced as a CEO of a delivery and logistics company in Nigeria during this pandemic?
The challenges we've faced so far, like the feedback we've been getting from our staffs, get to do it for them making deliveries. So I think they don't really have much of challenges doing deliveries, just that sometimes some men of the VIU sometimes would harass them on their way going for deliveries, asking them for some unnecessary documents that are not required, even after the minute that delivery companies are exempted and they can move around. So we don't really have much of challenges getting to deliver for our customers. So the only challenge I think we are having is the availability of sanitizers and other materials to use in protecting customers and materials that need to protect our riders who go for deliveries. But I think we have gotten a better solution to that because we have some people who are delivering those stuff to us. So now we don't have any issues at all making deliveries in Abuja.
Okay, from my brief research, I realized that 30% of the world's trade has reduced due to the pandemic. We have about 50% of non-essential goods, such as construction materials, being reduced due to this pandemic. 70% of vessels have delayed their arrival time by as much as 40 days. And these figures are rapidly changing because we know that everything is moving at such a fast speed. So can you talk to me about this decrease in delivery, this decrease in synergy amongst world trade, and also its impact on delivery companies such as yours?
Yeah, I think the way it has affected logistics companies is that we are not really getting as much orders we were getting before, like we were getting before the pandemic, because most of our partners which we work with are sometimes travel agencies and government agencies. So since the pandemic, most of them are not really working. They are not in service. So we don't really get as much orders as we used to get before now. So most of our orders we are getting at the moment is through social media adverts and other promotions we are making offline, and that is what keeps bringing more orders for the company.
From a layman's perspective, one might argue that delivery companies are actually booming in this time of economic recession, because we see food companies partnering with logistic companies such as yours to ensure that their delivery is ongoing despite the pandemic. So are you saying today that business is actually looking gloomy for delivery companies as well as other sectors in Nigeria?
Yes, I would say yes, because TOWNBOY is a logistic company that connects thousands of customers to businesses and people via our simple and easy to use services. So with an expansive range of delivery concepts, we take all steps necessary to maintain precise time deliveries combined with efficiency. For now, we are based in Abuja and we are making advances by the day, working on developing groundbreaking ideas to improve the logistics industry in Abuja before spreading our services across the country. So talking about value chain, a value chain is a set of activities a firm operating in a specific industry performs in order to deliver a valuable product that is in goods and services for the market. So as a logistic company, we come in to make sure companies and people get their products and services delivered to their customers. So they are dependent on us and we are dependent on them. So it's a symbiotic chain we share to keep the supply chain alive. So we are always ready to help companies and people achieve their goals by playing our part effectively with our top-notch delivery services.
GERRY, EAMON, thank you so much for your time, and we wish you all the success there is. We'll take a short break right now. When we return, more on this topic. Don't go anywhere. Let me bring in Mark Moore here, the CEO of Motley Travel and Logistics. Mark, thank you so much for joining us in today's program.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Talk to me now. What are some challenges that you've faced with your logistics company during this COVID-19 pandemic?
The most of the challenge being faced with the logistics during this period, the fact that though the roads are a big tree, but most of the activities that are being carried out are basically within a confined environment, because of course interstate movements are quite restricted, and even when certain goods or items have to cross from one state to another, there's this challenge with the security operatives who are, either not fully or properly informed and are causing some kind of delays, or in some cases inability to pull through to deliver some of these things that has to be delivered. Yeah, so that's a basic challenge at this particular period in time.
Would you say this is a time where logistic companies are thriving economically, given the economic brunt the COVID-19 pandemic has on other sectors such as agriculture, media, banking, and so on and so forth?
I can admit to the fact that logistics companies are doing well at this time because there's a whole lot of demand actually. Because movement is restricted, and people, finding out convenience to, just get on the delivery companies to put their items from one point into another. So the demand is actually high. But I must tell you that the system actually itself wasn't ready for this surge as is presently witnessed, because, you have a situation whereby the deliveries are even delayed because the logistics company are overwhelmed by demand and all of that. So I think while we are adapting to the new norm, and while those who have these things to send are also increasing their demand, there has to be some kind of increase in infrastructure, increase in avenues where these demands can actually be met and these people are satisfied, because logistics is actually a major component of production. Whether you are producing food or whatever it is you are producing, moving it from one point to another has become very, very, very important. Without the producer, now this is a time where the logistics company really have a whole lot to do, and hopefully we are able to meet up with the demand as time goes on, and at the same time adapt.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is our new normal. The world is forever changed by this coronavirus pandemic. So how do you intend to improve your company's value chain in terms of ensuring that you have the capacity, the infrastructure to carry out the large amount of orders and attention that your company is now being faced with?
Yeah, the truth be told, we can really do so little, because one, the underlying factor when it comes to logistics is the infrastructure. It's not just the fact that you put a truck or a delivery van on the road. Infrastructures are not there. Basically, you have issues of road congestion, bad roads, and all of that, traffic, so these things really have to be in place. So whatever it is, I think the government should really pay attention to this, because one, if we have to move from dependence on oil into production, agriculture, for example, because we are actually tilting out of dependence on oil now. So if that is going to thrive, then logistics will have to be given the requisite attention to meet up with this bulky demand that we are going to come into post-COVID. Certain infrastructures will have to be put in place and will have to work properly. For example, the train network will have to be improved upon. More coaches will have to come, especially those for cargo. Then the roads will have to be worked upon. We have to be fixed. When this is over, we are going to have, the demand is going to be so much that there's going to be need to invest in both infrastructure and equipment to meet with the demands of because those who are producing from the farm will have to move the products from the farm into the market. Don't forget that these days people are cautious towards social distancing. So everything, as much as we can do electronically, as much as we can do using technology is what is going to be embraced. So we're going to have a whole lot of things moving onto the social space, in the internet, the tech world, and so moving items from the market, from the farm to the market, and at the same time moving these items from the market, to the home. So it's a whole chain that has to be invested upon, and basically some of these infrastructures will have to be improved upon for this to work and sail well. It's not something that will happen overnight, but we have to be conscious about the development of and making sure that this works, and we'll be good to go.
Thank you for clarifying that, because most times when we look at the big picture of global logistic firms such as DHL or Amazon, who is still hiring up over 100,000 staff despite the economic recession that looms, we look at it in silo or in independent of the government in which they are operating in. So how can the Nigerian government come into play in helping logistic firms such as yourself to thrive during this period in creating proper infrastructure for you guys to go about your daily business?
Yeah. Okay. Fine. You see, the thing is that I don't think we should jump the gun, because number one, Nigeria is not an industrialized nation, so to speak. We are forced now, because of the situation, we are forced to go into this, hopefully, when this is over, because, of course, the oil price has dropped and all of that. So now I think we have to start from what we have, build up from where these international companies and these other companies have. Look at what they've done and what they are doing. There are going to be mistakes along the line, but from these mistakes, these are where the policies will stem from. You cannot just get it all swarmed up at once, but you let it slide. People are going to come in. For example, there has, like I said earlier, there has to be investment. That is the first thing that has to be done. Investment in the sense of infrastructure. Then secondly, these companies that are operating in silos, there has to be a strong network. Don't also forget the fact that e-commerce is also taking shape as it is as well. So it's all like a chain. Okay, you produce your thing, you upload it up on the e-commerce site, and people buy. The delivery person takes it. So the policy we're talking about here is not something. It's not something we can just just copy and just paste. But we have to do things and see how peculiar our situation drives what we really want, and we tweak it and make these changes so that it works and fits our people, both on the ground and above or up there. So that's what I think. I think the policy will be built, will be strengthened as in the course of this whole thing as we progress in the post-COVID era with the whole logistic drive.
You've spoken about a huge investment needed in the logistics sector in Nigeria. What do you reckon is the barrier to entry for businessmen and businesswomen alike coming into this sector?
Don't forget that. Apologies to all. Don't forget that Nigerian businessmen, a couple of them who have these means really do not rely on things that will take time. An average Nigerian businessman wants to invest and get his money quick, fast, and in a hurry. You see, these things take time. These things, you have to set up the process. You have to get your clientele base. You have to get access to the source where these things are being produced or being manufactured. You have to move these things to the market. You have to create a base. People need to take time to trust the fact that your service delivery is good. So all of this takes time to mature. And an average Nigerian businessman doesn't want or doesn't have that patience. You see, the thing is, however we want to see or however we want to take it, we will be forced to take that path, that painful path of patience to see things grow. Because the fact that we've always done things, quick, fast, like that, we've gotten used to the easy life, and we're not building processes. And by way of building processes, you're also building institutions. So I believe as well that the private sector really has a lot to do in terms of giving data, data that is workable for the government to be able to see and take the decision. For example, in 2018, according to the Logistics and Supply Chain Industry Report, the volume of transaction when it comes to logistics was about 250 billion. Now, if you look at this size, then look vis-a-vis the challenges we have on the road network, the congestion, and all of that, you could see that if the conditions are right, if there's a whole lot of investment, both from the private and from the government, there is nothing stopping the logistic chain generating as much as ₦1 trillion. So it's all about time, and it's all about setting up processes and infrastructure for these things to thrive. And I think we will be forced at this point, to follow the process and channel through and see that these things stand. There's no shortcut to anything anymore, as it were.
We're being joined right now by Norris Campbell. Thank you so much for joining us in today's episode.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. So your business, your logistics company, Ahia Express, is still able to carry out its businesses despite the ease of the lockdown. Nigerians are still patronizing you guys. So can you talk to me more about some of the advantages you've been able to derive from this pandemic?
Okay, so on pandemic level, I think it's been really good for logistics, just the way, there are different opportunities that you can find in different situations. In war, for example, people in defense, do really well. People who manufacture weapons and stuff do well. War is not a good thing, but there are opportunities there that help with battles. So it's kind of the same thing with the pandemic. You have people in the healthcare sector that have seen opportunities where they can use technology to improve access to healthcare while people are on lockdown. And the same thing goes for logistics companies as well. So because people haven't been able to move about, logistics companies are able to get to people's homes or, hospitals or whatever to give them the things that they need. So it's been a great opportunity for most logistics companies to get into the market and to thrive as well. And then even with relaxing the lockdown, I think a lot of people haven't actually been going out as much as, they were pre-COVID-19. So as a result of that, people have kind of gotten into the routine of ordering stuff online, having their food, groceries, medicines delivered to their homes, just because it's safer than going out and risking being infected. So, in general, I think it's been okay for logistics companies.
How do we go about improving the logistics value chain?
So I think right now, the barriers to entry are kind of high. You have all these fees and levies, that have to be paid. And yes, there has to be regulation in every sector, and the regulators, have to put fees to make sure that people are compliant. But I think regulation should be relaxed, especially for small businesses, because these are the people who actually create jobs in developing countries like Nigeria. So I think the regulators need to relax on their fees. The cost of entering into the business, has to be lowered as well. Because if you don't do that, you're deterring people from actually entering into the sector, into the industry. So I think that's definitely one way that it can be improved. Another thing is to improve road networks as well. In general, in Abuja, we don't really have that much of a problem because a lot of the roads, are accessible. When you start going into, areas like Kubwa, Maraba, there are parts of the state where logistics, companies have to go into, and roads aren't the greatest, in those parts. So I think improving road networks, the quality of roads that we have, would really be a booster for logistics companies, for logistics generally in Nigeria.
We've seen companies like Amazon thrive despite the economic recession looming. They're in fact hiring over 100,000 new staff, across the United States. Why is it that in Nigeria we've not been able to distinguish one logistic company that is thriving despite this pandemic? What needs to be done to see that we create our own Amazons? We know Jumia is there, Konga is there, but they're also complaining of hardship in this time. Why is it that our logistic companies are not thriving the way its U.S. counterparts are?
I don't think it's fair to expect an Amazon or to compare with, an Amazon, because Amazon is a super company, so you don't really expect the same. Recently, I think, there's this news that was making the rounds, and they were saying there's going to be a 2 million naira levy imposed on logistics companies. It's like a 2 million naira licensing fee per year for logistics companies. Things like that are, really, they're not good for logistic companies because these are small businesses that are trying to enter the market. So you're basically, making sure that only big businesses like the Jumias and the Kongas and DHL are the only guys who are able to operate in this market. The younger guys, the SMEs, are unable to operate. And then we also have things like, education, literacy levels of drivers as well, of the riders. It reduces the efficiency if they're unable to communicate properly with the customer or, with the vendor or whoever. So they have to be able to read, they have to be able to write, they have to be able to, communicate with the people that they're serving. So the lack of proper, education with our workforce is really a barrier to growth. It really hampers growth as well. And then addresses as well, because for Amazon, for example, every address that you need to get to is probably on Google, and you can easily find it. But for Nigerian addresses, you need landmarks like a bus stop or somewhere before you can identify where you're trying to go to. And that really impacts efficiency. So you find that only the big companies who are able to train all their drivers, and all of that are able to thrive in the industry.
I see. That's an issue that the other callers haven't spoken about. The lack of proper mapping, adequate mapping of cities and addresses. So what do you think the government can do? Can we take advantage of this imposed curfew? We know that the lockdown has been relaxed in most of the states now. But can we take advantage of the imposed curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. to ensure that proper mapping is implemented during this time?
I don't know if that is something that's up to us. I know that Google carried out a mapping exercise about 2 or 3 years ago, where they were paying, people to have them put like numbers on everybody's gates, and I think that happened across the 36 states and Abuja in Nigeria. So I don't know if it's up to the logistics companies to improve mapping. What people tend to do is employ the more experienced drivers. So your logistics company will thrive if your rider or your driver has been in that city where they're, services for a long time, and they know the city and they can get in and out. But in terms of mapping and making sure that, the addresses are correct and stuff, and you can actually identify the location that you're going to, I think it's up to the government and Google to kind of collaborate and make sure that, that's accurate.
Most definitely. Government plays the majority role in that. So I believe this is an opportunity for them to actually take advantage of its stay-at-home policy to ensure that they can take out this exercise, yes, and not only do proper mapping, but also proper consensus, because we all claim that we're about 201 million people. But we've seen from all the data and statistics, that are contradicting each other from the international sector to our local sector. So I think it's an opportunity they can definitely take advantage of. But earlier on, you said that it's unfair to compare companies such as Amazon to Jumia or Konga. We have all that we need to succeed as Nigerians. So why can't a Nigerian build a mega company such as Amazon?
So it's not about, I don't think it's about Nigerians not being able to build an Amazon. I think, we're capable of doing so. But there are so many forces that kind of deter companies from growing to that point. Like I mentioned before, obviously, the literacy levels in Nigeria are lower. So you find that you have to do quite a bit of training. I actually used to work for Jumia a lifetime ago, and a lot of money was spent on training, making sure that, the drivers knew exactly what they needed to do. They knew how to use the app. They knew how to read the maps, and all of that. And then remember that people like Amazon, are able to use the most advanced technology that they can for their logistics, like using drones for delivery, and things like that. This is an advantage that we don't even have in Nigeria, because I think drones are banned in Nigeria for commercial use. And if you want to use drones, you have to pay a hefty sum or something. So the barriers to, business growth in Nigeria are high. It's everything we're doing here, especially for businesses, is very capital intensive, and small businesses don't have access to that kind of capital. And even the big ones, that do have access to capital, there are other forces on the ground that are working against them. So government regulators are impounding their bikes and their vehicles. They have to pay all these fines and fees and bribes in some cases. So the system, in the US, the system that Amazon operates in, allows them to grow, allows them to operate independently. But in Nigeria, look at what happened with Gokada and Opay in Lagos.
Yes.
They woke up to new legislation and they were out of business. So these are the issues, that businesses will face.
I read recently that government policies are more favorable to international companies looking to do business in Nigeria rather than supporting our locally homegrown businesses. Do you find this to be true? You've worked in Jumia, now you have your own local logistics business. Was the situation more beneficial to those? Because we know that in Jumia is a bigger company than yours. Was the situation more beneficial to Jumia than it is to you, who's running a small to medium scale enterprise?
I think, it would definitely be better for a bigger company to compete than it will be for smaller businesses. Because like I said, the barriers to entry are higher for small businesses that don't have the same access to capital. But for me personally, when I started Ahia Express, it was kind of a logistics service for my own online grocery delivery company. And when, the company shut down, I kind of changed the business model for the logistics. So we are partnered with, a firm that's dedicated to telehealth and telemedicine and providing prescription delivery for their customers. So I don't even take on any of the costs or anything like that. All of that's handled by the telehealth partner, and I get paid, for them to use bikes. But other people don't have this. I think one thing, though, that's really working for small businesses in the logistics industry is that there are so many SMEs in Nigeria. There are so many small businesses, from food and drink to fashion, all kinds of things. Market, manufacturing. People need logistics. People need to be able to get to their customers. And a lot of SMEs operate from, online, operate online. They don't have any brick and mortar shops. So I think, the fact that there are quite a lot of small businesses that need logistics services, logistics will always, have a space. There will always be room for more logistics companies to enter the market. But regulation, government regulation, is always a problem. It always hampers entries and growth, and that's really the main problem for the smaller companies.
All right. Norris, Campbell, that's a fine place to leave it. Thank you so much for your time on today's program.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. We'll take a short break right now. When we return, more on The Weekend Show. Don't go anywhere.